Okay, hello everybody. Today we have the pleasure of looking a little bit at the strategic view and then moving very quickly into kind of the familiar. Oh, what happened? It didn't like my show. We try again. We look at the familiar environment of project delivery. Yeah? So this week we are still looking at the strategic side, and next week we are starting through with element of initiation, planning, and as well kind of control, kind of topics that are probably your bread and butter as well. Yeah, if you're starting as a project manager. So supply chain management is today the first part of the talk. Notice here there's some reading with Actor Network series who analyzed supply chains as actor networks in your kind of assembly or project organization. Very cool stuff if you want to understand how supply chains actually interact, and wonderful topics like hidden agendas. This is a polarizing term. It can be just naive business intent, that the players bring to the table. Then this is very good literature to read. For general overview, I have gone to the operations management literature because it's a little bit more easy written. So you will see supply chain and project management is often very contract or procurement focused. So this has a certain heaviness in terms of terminology and even legal language, which we come to. But for now, those are quite good sections to read if you want to understand a little bit more.
Are these on the e-learning portal?
On the e-learning, the slides. Because of the feedback that I got yesterday, I've uploaded all content yesterday after we had the session.
I couldn't see it yesterday or this morning. Are you talking about this one?
Yeah.
I mean, these resources, are they on the ELB?
Yeah, this is in the... Maybe not? Okay. Shall I have a quick look? This is again the danger. I have a different view, so thanks for bringing this up. Let's have a quick look.
I definitely looked this morning and I couldn't see anything.
This looked well. This is always promising.
Always goes up, it only goes up to lecture 6 online.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is one of the deliveries that you would see. So this is for KB 7031. So this is a new program. It should look something like that, right? So you see those two, right? This is what we're covering. The other one is delete. That is the other one. So again, it should look like that. Oh, and you have a point. Thanks for bringing that up. Where are they gone? Okay, I uploaded in the break, yeah? Or do you want it now? Then I copy it quickly over. Okay, I copy it quickly over that you have the slides at least, and you can make.
Are those journals in the reading list? Even those literature, those journals, are they in the reading list?
Yes, there will be, yeah. Okay, let's do that quickly. Okay, that will create a temporary clash, but it will do the trick. Okay. So now you should have it in theory. In practice, it may take a minute to upload. Yeah. Okay. So for supply chain management, I really want to kind of give you here an overview. So the intent is not necessarily for you to become a master in supply chain management, but I want you to understand how this relates actually to project management and the potential that it brings actually to our tools and techniques that we have ready to manage our projects. Yeah. Okay, supply chain management, what is it? Well, there are different ways of looking at it, and we have to go a little bit back in the literature. So supply chain became kind of a hot topic in the 80s and 90s, and then around 2000, and then it kind of quieted down. There was a lot about communication and alignment of networks for projects, but it became only a hot topic again kind of around 2008, when we had the just after the financial crisis, actually, people started optimizing and looking again critically at the supply chain management, actually. So what is supply chain management? It's actually multiple things. Increasingly, the management of multiple relationships across supply chain is being referred to as such. So management of multiple relationships. Yeah? This means that we as a business unit or as a project manager may act with other team members in our project, or we may actually deal with the business. Yeah, and in the business we have again contacts and relationships, right? So that there may be a salesperson whose product we're actually purchasing, but then there comes maybe a project manager or technical staff to our site to install it, right? And that is another relationship. Yeah. So then we have as well supply chain, although it says chain, it's not a chain of a business necessarily. So it can be one-to-one, it can be a business-to-business relationship, but nowadays it's more often a network of multiple businesses and relationships. Yeah, so it's a recognition that maybe even for one function we have maybe even competing companies in our supply chain, right? So we may interact for one job with one company, or we have a job that is too big for that one company, so we need multiple players kind of having the same attributes or skills or knowledge that we actually require for our project. Yeah. Then it can be as well a total business process of excellence. So we see that as well now emerging in projects. Having said that, that is still a minute thing. So I will show you some examples that kind of did it already in 2010, but it's still not common practice. But the idea is for as well incentives like lean or sustainability agenda. Yeah, if you want to be sustainable, or in American English, green, then you would often look at the whole supply chain and try to work through your different tiers to actually arrive at the level where you can really say like your product or your projects are green, or sustainable. Yeah. Now, to the definition. So what do we actually mean by this? So supply chain management. So there's an internal supply chain. that integrates business functions, a flow of materials and information from inbound to outbound. So here we are looking at the entity. Yeah? So this can be our company, or that can be our hosted project organization within our business, for example. Yeah? And again, this is the inbound to outbound business end, if you want. Then we have the management of dyadic or two-party relationship with immediate suppliers. I'll show you that as well in a second. And then we have the a little bit upscaled version, chain of businesses. So this means we have literally the picture as it suggests, multiple businesses that kind of do something in a product. I have examples in a second. And then as well, network of interconnected businesses. So this was already what I mentioned. And this may go for the requirements. However, let me show you first the pictures before I go for the other definition. So what is the difference between relationship chains and networks? So this is internal. How do I have? Okay, I do it first. So internal is maybe that you have relationships where you align within your companies. You have a, what shall we go for? You have a logistic hub, you have a production plant, and it's basically bringing from your production plant to your logistics hub the product, whatever you're doing. Yeah? So this could be something like this. If it's internal in the company, this would be it more or less. Yeah? Then we have dyadic. This would be to go with the same idea. You manufacture and somebody else does the logistics for you. It's a different company entity. Yeah, and then you have the external idea. So where you have a chain, this could be anything from raw materials to refined materials to your actually manufacturing or production or assembly, whatever you're doing, and then maybe selling the product or giving it to a sales store that then sells it. Yeah. And again, then we have the network, and this recognizes already that if you're sitting here, you have multiple companies that you're interacting with, and you may even compete, and you may have similar suppliers that sit as well in your supply chain. Yeah, this is basically the idea of this. Now, this is just like a description of describing basically supply chains. So here are the examples. So this could be integration of a business function. I have as well. Do I have the example? Oh yeah. No, I have again first the other one. So this is a two-party relationship with suppliers. So this could be a commitment or partnership if you want. Yeah. Then you have a chain of businesses including suppliers, and last but not least, you have the network of interconnected businesses. Okay, to get a little bit our head around that. Could I have an example for internal or an integration of a business function? What could that be? Have you experienced something like that, where you were used to one interface and suddenly the company was doing it all? Anybody? No?
Basically all the startup companies nowadays.
Yeah? Startup? So for example?
I don't know, Brexit, for example. So there is no other parties doing their businesses. They just do it pretty much alone.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the example. Which company was that?
Brexit.
Prezi.
You know, I guess
The slides that I'm
yeah,
using.
exactly.
Okay.
Presentation with Prezi, I guess.
Yeah, so in my other module, the slides that I'm using, so how have they internalized something? So it's kind of the PowerPoint kind of Microsoft Office package, and they have kind of separated that and said like, actually, that solution is not good enough, let's run it as a own business, or?
I'm not pretty sure, to be honest. Well, probably there was someone who had a dream to make his or her own company and just got a lot of IT guys and stuff like this and I don't know.
Okay, as a startup, yeah, they could be. I'm not familiar enough. So from the narrative, it goes in the right direction. I had a very simple one, and I have to admit the example is outdated. But this was EasyJet. Do you remember? In the past we went, maybe I'm stretching it with some of you, but I remember when I lived in Berlin, the old good-fashioned way of buying a ticket is you took some cash in the money, you had your passport, you walked to the stewardess counter, which was an external service from Berlin Tegel at the time, airport, and you would ask how much is it to Newcastle, and the lady would say, oh, let me check quickly, and then like type away, and she would say to you, hey, I have a flight with EasyJet for you, just going then, and then another one, alternative flight with Lufthansa. Which one do you prefer? And then I would say like, ooh, I really like the EasyJet one, because it normally came at a certain price. But EasyJet removed that, right? It was not that lady anymore at the counter in Tegel, for example. They actually had their own store. So they started owning the ticket sales. Yeah, they had their own webpage. You may have recognized that. Yeah, and actually they've gone a lot further. Now you are actually doing their work. Yeah, so you are actually picking and booking and then fighting with seats. Yeah, this is what they normally did for you as a service. This is now upside down, right? So this is internalization. Yeah, one example. Does that make sense? Yeah. So as a project manager, for example, if you go sustainable, you could integrate, for example, the monitoring of operations. Yeah? If you have a lot of technical skills and you have built a product, often you have the know-how and understanding anyway. So there are a lot of technical companies that often do this. So they do maintenance and kind of product, I shouldn't go too far, but basically their focus as well on the maintenance and operation. So this could be as well an internalization. Then dyadic, strong relationships between two businesses to compete. Any examples? Oh, sorry, I have jumped too far there. So this is two businesses coming together to compete together on the market. Yeah,
Sony and Nokia, they went together.
Yeah, Sony and Nokia. For what product, or what? How did we experience this?
Well, Sony were making phones, so were Nokia. Sony had a slight problem with manufacture, so then Nokia took them over. So then it became Sony Nokia as a bigger brand because they thought they could overtake the market, which they couldn't because Apple came and ate them up.
Okay. So there is a specific segment, and they saw it as a. So this was competitors that kind of came together to basically overcome maybe production shortages or capacity constraints. Yeah, is that correct? Yeah. Yeah, can be. Yeah, it's a good example. Other ones?
Bentley and Rolls-Royce many years ago.
Yeah, and so this is actually quite some time ago, right? And that kind of did they have a similar market segment?
I think so. I think so, and probably most of their engineers were basically the same. Sometime and the parts they produced was very convertible to the other kind of cars. But it was many years ago, I guess.
Okay, so there are a few mergers of companies. This doesn't necessarily mean that they have actually dyadic relationships. So in a supply chain, I have here, again, this is a little bit old, but at Amazon, and they actually built a relationship with their delivery services. Do you remember which one it was? In the UK, this is very specific, actually. I know that they did similar things in other countries too. What did Amazon do? Who delivered Amazon parcels? Does anybody know?
UPS.
Yeah? So UPS is actually... Yeah? Other ones?
They're the ones that never delivered.
Okay, maybe a better... Okay, so...
They're complaining about them to Amazon.
Who is delivering it now, when you get Amazon?
Amazon Logistics at the minute.
Which one?
They call themselves Amazon Logistics.
Amazon Logistics, so they've actually internalized that. Yeah, but maybe that was due to the problem. So initially they went actually with Royal Mail. Yeah, they had a partnership, And they competed as a package unit because they had realized that every different parcel delivery company had slightly different systems. So they couldn't standardize their parcels. And they realized that that was a huge issue for them. And this partnership really advanced their business. So they could actually make efficiency claims on either side. And in the end, yeah, they're doing it now themselves. Yeah, so this is well something to be learned out of that. Yeah. So an external, external chain, we had them already. This was the automotive. So chain of businesses, including suppliers. What could that be? Probably multiple. Yeah. So did you know any companies supplier?
Porsche is for the German automotive factories.
Yeah, can be.
Yeah, and the supplier of Porsches, but there are a lot. For example, Sharp, LG.
Yeah, spot on. Okay, yeah. So automotive was a very good one. So automotive, we have so many different initial product parts that are actually very complicated. That you have companies just specializing on that part. Yeah. So this comes from braking systems, and then the actual brake ceramic, yeah, or depending on what you want to have. And they again use specialized suppliers for their products to have the purity of materials and so forth.
Bearings and Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. It can be different supply chains. So automotive companies have often this tiers of suppliers. Again, this is oversimplified. In reality, most of the automotives that I know have as well networks. They try to avoid to rely on only one supply chain link. And if you look at this, they actually play with as well pre-qualifying games for their different supply chain members. Yeah, so this is quite interesting. Okay, but good examples here. Yeah? I see you're more familiar with that. And then networks, well, here I had just Dell computers, but in reality, you will see if you are working on larger projects, you will arrive as well at a network of supply chain. There's no way around it. Yeah. As soon as you had something that is a little bit more complex or technology advanced, you normally work with the whole network, yeah, of supply chain and maybe even competing sub-products, yeah, that come to the fore. Okay, I have the example as well later, and so just be with me. Okay, we had. Oh, this was bad. Why have I automated this? Okay, no. Okay, we go one back.
Is lean production as a kind of supply chain?
So lean is a very good example. This is one of the big theorems that you would use to actually optimize your supply chain. Yeah, so lean doesn't work if you just implement it in your company and the rest of your supply chain or the staff that rock up on your production have no idea what that means. Yeah? They would be probably surprised by the warning lights going off and run away rather than focusing where the warning light went off. Yeah? So and sustainability as well, topics like this, to just being implemented at the project level or project office, yeah, if you want, is often impossible unless you have the kind of commitment from the supply chain. Yeah. Important other element about and you've probably noticed this. This was really kind of finding a definition or a shared understanding. There is another problem. There's a different meaning to different people with supply chain management. So definitions to have different meanings or emphasis, but they are at least, well, it's really for me management of operations across organizational boundaries. This is a key element, and you have to understand that. So the guys that you're actually working with, they are actually employed by another company. So if you are not happy and you're just shouting at them, then you're very unlikely to get any commitment from them. Yeah? So we have to as well think about how we can actually create maybe a common philosophy. This is already pitched quite high. So philosophy would be something like lean. Yeah, if you want to implement this as a quality system, or as well if you agile, yeah, with Scrum. It depends which system you're preferring there. Then this may be something that you're buying into. and you're doing so, often supply chain is very low pitched just for the commercial benefit. Yeah? Not even talking about green and sustainability. So as well, lean is normally initially an attempt of cost cutting in the long run. That is there's a joke about lean. Lean is literally optimizing your system into everything that is needed and required. This means as a human, you have a lot of two organs that would go. Just be aware of that. That means that there are implications with this if it's implemented in the wrong way. Okay, so we had the examples. Sorry, we run through those again. I shouldn't have made the slides automated. I regret this now. Okay, let's have a look at examples to get our head around it, because this is quite hefty, and I don't expect anybody that you had experience with this. So thanks to Wal-Mart, they gave me a wonderful pitch. So what do we actually look for in a project? We are often as well focused on the user interface. We want our product or our service to be successful that we are designing, and we put a lot of effort, of course, into this, and to have the right commercial impact. So sorry, I have to apologize for that at the same time. But this came from Wal-Mart. Oh no, it didn't work. Okay, it comes later. You will see. We had something like this in a very simplified supply chain. So you can see here, this is actually Procter & Gamble or other manufacturer that does something, detergent, and that may get sold in Walmart. So here the idea is you have underlining chemical manufacturers, oil companies, and you notice here already I'm summarizing. I don't give you kind of the full complexity of the product. Then you have a detergent producer who uses those, combines them in a meaningful way, or has the right filling facilities. At the same time, for the packaging, you have kind of the timber industry that maybe go to a paper manufacturer, and then they make the technical packaging, and then you get that to Procter & Gamble and other manufacturers, who then kind of put it together in a meaningful way, and then it goes to Walmart, also third-party distribution centers, or then directly to the Walmart store. And then in the Walmart store, the dream is, of course, you walk in, you recognize your product of your desire, and you just get it for consumption, right? And then as it's taken, somebody already pushes one more for sale, available for the next customer onto the shelf. So that's a little bit the idea. So again, this is just to familiarize a little bit of the kind of relationship. So if you actually look at this, it's a lot more interrelated. So in reality, you see that the supplier is actually relying on the distributor to tell them how much more quantities they need. So there's a relationship, and this is the point of this chart. We see actually, if you analyze who is actually dictating how much, for example, wood for packaging is needed. This is very much depending on the front end, how many customers actually buy it, right? This is basically the thing. And you see that there are multiple relationships. We talked before about knowledge sharing and sharing ideas. So here we are having a completely different game. Here it's of course about information availability on standardized forms of exchange, right? So you wouldn't really try to go here too far with this. Okay, so an example from projects. This is from BAA. This is actually, I should have really checked if they're still doing the same, because I remember that last year we had a guest talk, and some of you will enjoy that too next semester. And they were actually thinking about restructuring, but BAA Projects did exactly what I mentioned earlier. They kind of looked at the interface and realized that there is a big opportunity for them to kind of step in and do basically supply chain management as well, and kind of the coordination of information and logistics. So they are very successful in this. so to speak. So this is the initial idea of the different units. Oh, my symbol didn't come up. This is not good. So they use different information systems and basically use a central point where they kind of create the project's info point, and they update basically as a central point the other suppliers to have the right information. Yeah, so nowadays we play around with streaming service for that. Yeah, so if you have like barcodes on your product, or if you have like machines being pre-ordered because a government likes to buy your machines, then this goes basically in the system. And on the other end of the supply chain, the materials are being actually sourced and move up the supply chain, and you have running times respectively. Yeah. So, so what does it actually mean? So you can see they own the whole process now, nearly the product lifecycle if you want, but for projects. Yeah. So it's bespoke new stuff. So there's not necessarily a product yet, but they do the management facilitation. So the process starts with the development, with defined need, develop solution, enable delivery. Sounds familiar, right? So this is very good. We can do this too. Then it goes to design and engineering. So here you have to design the appropriate quality. So they have actually a breakdown structure, and they do facilitation workshops. Enable quality solution, become clear of the project initiation document or often quality criteria. Yeah? If you need a certain product quality, then you would define this here. And enable building regulations, compliance. So this is here for construction piece. Then they look at the supply chain. They basically manage the whole supply chain, right? Develop the requirements. We understand what the business wants and what the performance parameters are. So basically the idea is they are working with the supply chain. They're tying everybody in. So if you're in their supply chain, you cannot subcontract. Yeah? This is not the possibility. You basically have often to list who is working with you. Yeah? So it basically is a little bit focusing on the respective delivery patterns that people sign up to. Then research, we find the products and the services that will best meet the need. So they are kind of determined as well to the kind of sub-product, yeah? So assembled parts that you need. And then they will acquire them and look after the fulfillment, yeah? That they are as well system relevant and basically configured so it works as one product, right? Okay, and then they do the usual project delivery. Again, you're familiar with this. It's the definition, design, manufacture, assemble. So in a way, this is the underlying supply chain that they're using for that. And they even go in with guarantees. So they look even after the maintenance and hold the supply chain for their sub-parts responsible. Right? This is the idea. This is a consultant service. Yeah? They don't, there is no factory behind them as such. Yeah? This is quite interesting. So again, planning, scheduling, and work completion. So if there's anything to be maintained or regularly monitored, then they will basically facilitate this. Okay, so one example. Then we had the Dell computers as another example. Here the idea was, yeah, we have a look at that. So this is actually, that has already changed again, I think. There has actually made recently changes again that I haven't yet captured in this example. But to give you a nutshell, they had kind of their sales offices in 43 countries, and then a sales presence in 170 countries, and 6 manufacturing sites that I've highlighted here. So to deliver to the rest of the world is basically a logistical problem, right? So you have to figure it out. So the ownership of the value chain, so they didn't even see it as a supply chain. They analyzed the supply chain and where the real value lies of their product. Is it on the front end where you actually take raw material and refine it into refined materials? Probably not. So they had suppliers for that were out of the value chain, but they noticed the ships already matter. Yeah, so once you start actually putting them together with different heating processes and do the electrical wiring and respective tasks, yeah, this is actually where value sits. So they wanted to own this, and this is kind of the Dell idea or their competitive value. And then they wanted to get as well rid of all the interfaces of salesmen in between. Yeah, so the idea was they're delivering it directly to you. Has anybody ordered at that time a Dell computer? No? Yes? No? Has anybody got a Dell computer? Laptop? Oh, okay, so there were kind of unsatisfied customers, so you have a bad experience. Okay, so Dell's idea was really to have a value chain that makes bespoke computers, yeah. And if you look at it, the result was as well delivery to the customer. So that meant they had to have certain storage and logistic hubs to actually being able to assembly like bespoke computers or laptops in that time. And yeah, so 3 days of inventory. And inventory turns of 122 per year. Yeah? So the idea was really that you arrive at a very quick delivery system to a customer with a bespoke laptop. So they kind of aimed at customers that wouldn't buy like the standard laptop or computer, but one that is really required for you. Yeah, so if you're into programming or math labs or something like that, you may like that. Yeah. But you're right, the user interface may not be what you expect. So here is kind of supplier owned. You see even logistic hubs and local suppliers were kind of still outside, but the Dell factory and assembling of the computers itself was owned, and as well the delivery and the interface to the customer. So even if you had problems, Dell would actually deal with you directly. You would actually speak to the engineers that kind of belong to the company that manufactured it. Again, this model is not 100% true anymore, but that was the idea what they worked with for a long time. They have now shifted again. Yeah, but it's one way of owning what creates a value. Yeah. Now, a typical supply chain, what does it look like? I mentioned this already, some form of raw materials and some way of transporting those. Often then to the factory, then there's maybe a market requirement, and then there's again kind of the parts that have been put together into a product and then being transported to where you actually buy or acquire them. So that is a supply chain upstream. And then we have the demand stream, which goes basically downwards. By purchasing as a customer or you using a product like this, you are basically incentivizing more production. Yeah? This is a simple linear format. This is simplified. I should add there is as well something about political economy. It doesn't necessarily work that linear, but for the simplification, this is actually quite a good idea to understand it. And the demand chain works vice versa. Yeah? So here it's a wonderful suit that the gentleman buys for 3 notes, whatever that means, and has been delivered by a truck. So he may decide that that suit is not suitable. So by not purchasing, you give as well incentive of not producing more. Yeah. So it's that simple. So it works in both ways. Now there's another famous one, and this is quite old actually, but. This was an issue particularly observed in American and UK industries. And the idea was really that there is over-the-wall syndrome between the supply chain partners. So you may be part of a supply chain, but you don't recognize it as such. Yeah? So in your company, you get rewarded as a client to come up with the idea what you want. Yeah? So here we have a kind of, what is it? Is it pull or push? What do we have here? By the arrows, so this is the arrow direction. Is this pull or push? Push. Who thinks it's push? Who thinks it's pull? Oh, okay, so this is even, and majority is skeptical and doesn't participate in voting, so that's a good fair statement too, yeah? So, so what do you think is the push? What is push? This one or this one?
Supply.
Yeah, supply is push, right? and this is pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and here this is a client, right? Can we agree on this? Yeah. And then this is pull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's pull. I know the arrows, I know if you're looking at system design, you're right, yeah. The arrows show the wrong direction, so this was, the paper didn't consider this, yeah, I'm heartbroken. But the point is, yeah, it's a pull system. So here, in this case, we have, yeah, advances in engineering and software, but I mean, here it's actually aimed at the poor construction industry. They have a bad image in that sense. But it could really work with any kind of project that is bespoke, and you as a project manager will have this interface. So this is a problem. So a client tells you, I want something, this product A, and he throws it over to the designer, architect, you name it. Yeah, the designer is going away, ooh, what is in fashion? Let's have a look. Last year I won a prize with this design, let's try this out. Yeah, and they come up with a new design, and the client is, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But they don't see it yet. So this amazing design goes to whoever is like responsible for maybe the structural soundness or technical accuracy, you name it. There can be as well programming if you go with softwares. And they try to implement that to their best extent. And then it goes to the quantity surveyor or the person that makes money up, right? How much it costs. And they kind of price it with tables or very informed like resource supply chain indicators, yeah. And they arrive at the price, and then it goes to mechanical services, and they like take the piece apart to put it back together to get the electricity in. And then it goes to the contractors, material suppliers, because the material wasn't right, and then it's being built that way, yeah. And at the end, everybody is surprised. Why doesn't it look like what I wanted? That's a big question. Yeah. So the point here is there is a we call it fragmentation. Yeah. So it's a device. There is no ownership of the supply chain. So the idea here being is the quantity surveyor is not talking necessarily to the client, yeah, which is a bad thing. So here we have like an issue by creating the right communication lead. And often the project manager is the one that is kind of put into the middle of this, yeah, to facilitate it, or to own this part and create and facilitate the communication. Now, this is a controversial example. Here we have as well some industries, retail, Marks and Spencer's. Does everybody know Marks and Spencer's? Yeah, good. So they have given me a controversial example. This comes actually out of the textbook, so I couldn't leave it out. Yeah, so Marks and Spencer helping you look and feel fantastic. Yeah, so this is amazing. So this is a sales interface, and she's very happy. So you can believe that it's trustworthy. So how do they arrive at this integrated product where they really understand what the customer wants? This is a big question, right? So this is what we are after. So and you can see now Sunbrace as well arrived in the 1970s. So the question that Marks and Spencer's had, in particular with their huge supply chains, was how can we actually achieve some form of stock control? How can we give the question of what you want to purchase, what you want to purchase, back to you, and give you the right option to buy it? That was a question that they kind of tried to pursue. And initially they did that with manual counting. So if somebody bought a certain type of suit, then they would basically reproduce this again and put it basically for you in the store if you want to purchase it again. Then we kind of moved on from like manual counting, although we still do that a lot, to a Kimball tag, yeah, which were beautiful plastic or cardboard cards that they were kind of stamped, and you could kind of run them through a machine that would count it for you and tell you even what item it was. So that was quite good. Then in the 70s we arrived at barcoding or zip codes or whatever you want to call it. And then 2003 we already arrived at intelligent labels. I haven't put, well, this is out of the book if you want, but there is of course now as well material itself that we can actually code. and register. Yeah? So you don't even have the unnecessary label in your clothes or product of your desire, because this is unwanted design feature, right? I haven't yet seen that labels were popular, although I'm saying so. There was a time where labels were popular too, but this is something like 20 years ago, I think, or 25 years ago. Yeah. But again, so this is important to recognize. So how would that work? So very simple. The intelligent label would be kind of coded to a particular product or service that is in design. And yeah, I mean, there's a parallel story to this, but let's go once through it. So, and the intelligent label would then have the microchip holding the unique number and being added to the garment, and then you can scan by the unit, basically, or association unit, the item in, and this allows you then a central information pool, right? So here you have a secure computer with stock details and database, and you know after scanning in that you have here a blue jacket on the hanger with this label number, right? And then this gets dispatched to the distribution center where you kind of hold the stock. This is normally a strategic point, right? That is close to where you want to distribute, right? So, so this is our stored in distribution center. In the distribution center, you may have a sales advisor. No, actually, this is, yeah. So we have a sales advisor uses a mobile scanner to check stock on display, and this then gets maybe transmitted to the information system, and then the distribution team can basically pick the new stock based on accurate data. So the idea is you have a bespoke kind of supply chain. In this case, it's a pull system, right?
It's a push system because you're pushing the product onto the customer.
Is that
rather than the customer requesting?
Actually, you have a point. Yes. Yeah, we will come to that later. This is a fair point. Yeah. The team then picks a new stock based on the accurate data. So, and then missing sizes and styles delivered to the store. This is again then the kind of truck that brings it to your store, and then every size and style available to the customer if you walk into the store. Yeah, and then last but not least, maybe the customer removes the label, or often the people actually do it there. But the idea is as well, this is as well the model that they use to spin off like delivery, home delivery, and similar systems, right? So this should be an old hat to you. Yeah, you're probably familiar with this already, and respectively, we have probably already better example. Yeah, so here you can play as well around if you own the supply chain. Has anybody Nike football shoes? Yes? Anybody? Have you designed your own ones, or did you just buy them bespoke? Sorry, other way around. Did you just buy them from the shelf, or did you order them and make your own?
Just buy them off the shelf.
Sorry? Yeah?
Just buy off the shelf.
Okay, bought off the shelf. So there was an advert, and Nike had that already for quite some time. They're actually internally run by UPS, which is quite interesting. So they actually have left UPS running kind of their logistics in the company even. And what they arrived at was a cheesy advert of one of the popular players coming to the screen. You want this shoe? You can't have this shoe. You need your own shoe. Design your own shoe. And then you could play around on the web page and design your own shoe. Yeah, you have a similar kind of idea in auto manufacturing. If you buy anything like a Mini now from the store, they ask you what seats you want, what color. So you're basically doing the interior design and potentially even the shell to a certain degree. Yeah, so this is basically down to efficient supply chain management, and in a way standardizing different aspects of your production. Yeah. Okay, so what is effective supply chain management actually trying to achieve? Well, benefits associated with the quality, cost, and delivery, I hope this came through. Focus on developing core competencies, and so this is as well core competencies between the supply chain, right? So of course everybody has a kind of specialist knowledge in the supply chain tier, yeah, there's no doubt about this, but it's how do you work together? How do you bring the different skills or capacity elements into one coherent product, yeah, or design? So it has a huge benefit here of aligning and working with each other. And then encourage as well innovations throughout the supply chain. So because you have a shared focus, you can of course adjust it respectively. And maturity towards establishing performance measurement and management. So we see here as well that we have actually a lot of supply chains that trim their supply chain and pre-qualify. Yeah? And it enhances the customer satisfaction. And I think one more. So more integrated approach from cradle to grave. So if you kind of do it front end to back end, you will see that often as well the aggregate suppliers can actually recycle a lot of your product, which gives you a huge advantage in terms of sales points and potentially as well profitability again. Yeah. Now there is a hidden evolution behind supply chain. So initially we started off with a focus on materials and components, and focus on integration of business-to-business relationships, and then a focus on customer requirements, satisfaction, focus on information and core competences, and then more and more squaring supply chain and demand chain processes. So here the consideration was really by Hannah's analysis of moving from an internal integration to dyadic relationship to external relationships, later to supply chain networks. We mentioned that already. So you will perform in that. You will have supply chain networks. This is very difficult to avoid. Yeah. So from supply chain to value chain, this is kind of a hot topic. It started with the physical distribution management, and there are clear lines against it. Yeah? Logistics management, supply chain management, then kind of demand chain management, something like that, push and pull systems, yeah, that you mentioned, and of course with this came as well value chain management. Yeah, so kind of looking how you can integrate it to create a greater value. And if you work in anything like aerospace, automotive, or even integrated building designs, something like that, which comes with BIM, then this would be very relevant. Yeah? If not one of the hottest topics. Now at this level, when you talk about value chain management, this is where lean comes in, where maybe a green supply chain, where you can talk about quality improvement, or as well bidding as a supply chain. Yeah? That is actually quite a tricky one, but you are widening here really what's available for you to actually do. Yeah. Yeah, shifts in supply chain focus. This is again older paper, but it really summarized it well. So we had actually looked from cross-functional integration to cross-enterprise. So project organization is basically as well the recognition that it's now not delivered anymore by one company. You may have a project-based company, but they may be part of if you as a project manager perform for them, as part of a different project organization, with different suppliers in it. Then you have physical efficiency to market mediation, from supply focus to demand focus, and we had as well from single company product design to collaborative concurrent products, processes, and supply chain design. Yeah, so you saw the example as well with the BAA. So from cost reduction to breakthrough business models as well, and from mass market supply to tailored offerings. Yeah, and
can you go back?
Yeah.
How do you mean from focus to demand, from supply focus to demand focus? What does that mean?
So your question is this from supply to demand focus? Yeah. So in the an economy. So simplified, you probably have noticed in the last 200 years we have started like doing a lot of things not by ourselves, but having products for it. And in the past it was a supply focus. So the initial products that came out, like cars from Ford or the first Toyota or Dell, is that the right? So in many countries, in Germany the Volkswagen, you saw that there was an idea of like, hey, we have here so many people walking around or cycling or taking the bus. why don't we give each one of them a car? This was the supply focus. And we still do so. And actually, my former company, PepsiCo, they look at the world and they're like, oh no, how can they not drink, well, my unit, how can whole Africa not drink Pepsi all the time? How can that happen? Yeah? And then you go there and of course start supplying it. Yeah, there is no demand yet. Nobody in Mozambique was at the time asking like, ooh, I wish I would have a sparkling beverage drink. Yeah? So this is not yet there. So you have to create the market first. Yeah, and then you can talk about, once you have a market, once people are aware, you can actually drink Pepsi, yeah? Then you are talking. Then you can actually ask, okay, how many Pepsis do you want? Yeah, and then again, you can again play a supply game there, or see if the market is actually picking up and refining the demand. Yeah. Does that answer? Yeah. So the supply focus is still many industries there. Yeah. So in construction, we often still in the UK, the biggest housing builder is still the government. Yeah, this is slightly controversial, but they basically decide that in Wall's End we need something more like 20,000 houses and flats, yeah, because we know that Honda will start manufacturing here in 2030. Yeah, we are building at the moment the infrastructure links. So this is still kind of supply focused. Yeah. And then if you are building your bespoke house there, yeah, then this is maybe a more demand focus. Yeah? If you have already the idea, the product that you want, yeah? then we are talking a different model. Yeah? Okay. Other questions? Very good question. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I have one more to kind of bring it back to value chains. This is old Porter chestnut. So basically dividing our overall company undertaking, yeah, into certain functions. And the key element here is that if you look at supply chain management, you will see that it's an essential element between the procurement of resources, yeah, and sitting across the different units that you can have. And according to Porter, this is very old chestnut. This is where the competitive advantage lies. Yeah? So you have on one side the support processes, then the primary business processes that you actually need, and the supply chain is often the element that now sits across those. Right? So if you want to create real value or benefits with your project, this is actually a very interesting underlining idea. Yeah, so here we look as well at collaborative work system. How do we work as a supply chain together? Even resource information systems. Do we even consider, if we are contracting out, what skills the guys have that come to the site? Is our designer actually kind of briefed of what lean is? Yeah, so it's the interfaces that may not sit right. Yeah, depending on how you're recruiting and work actually on development. Yeah. Then technology development, so computer-aided engineering or design. Do you have a central point where everybody has access to the information required across the supply chain? And then procurement of resources, again, the same idea. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. Aligning value chains, so there is a supplier push tendency in manufacturing, and this means you have a supplier value chain, then the firm value chain, which is kind of the strong clue here. Yeah, then you have the channel value chain, the buyer value chain, but then we have as well the other model, which is a client pull tendency, which is often project-based environments, where we have the buyer. Well, this time we go this way. You remember the client or the user or your buyer is kind of creating values that they see, and they may not be as knowledgeable. Yeah, so in the other way, you have potentially more understanding, but you have as well the business interface. Yeah, so here it depends how knowledgeable the buyer is, and then the channel value chains, and then of course the firm value chain, and last but not least the supplier value chains. And if it's dictated that way, you have another dynamic, of course. Yeah. So just in a nutshell, if you want to integrate that, there are certain dilemmas that you have to fight. Okay, leave it with this. Any questions at that point? Okay, let's make a 10-minute break. I've run a little bit over time, and then we are back with some governance. Yeah.